All right, so the last we heard of Masoud, last month, he was kidnapped by a militant group. How likely did he end up now in U.S. custody and facing a federal court?
I think that's a bit of an overstatement. He was arrested in 2012, admitted to this crime to Libyan officials, and then was held in prison for other crimes. He was one of Gaddafi's main bomb makers for about 28 years. And then in the late Trump administration, the Attorney General had gathered enough evidence, including the admission, but other strains of evidence as well, to make formal charges against him. And his home was raided by a Libyan official last month. Now, everything in Libya is militias, west and east, but
Hmm.
they're all on the government payroll. And Ganiwa, which is the one who likely carried out this operation, it still hasn't been publicly put out, but I'm getting that from my Libyan sources. He runs one of the biggest armed forces in Tripoli that supports the internationally recognized government. And then he was, as promised by the foreign minister and the president, turned over to U.S. officials and flown out from Misrata. So, although there's a lot of sort of fuss in Libya about, particularly in the east, which doesn't recognize the Western government,
Hmm.
about how he was captured. That doesn't really impact much how this trial will go, and the fact that he has admitted to the killing of 270 people of 28 nationalities in the late 1980s.
Why would Libya hand him over now?
Well, I think they want to be in the good graces of Western powers. This is the UN and US recognized government and European Union recognized government of Western Libya. It's not good for Libya's reputation to be seen as harboring terrorists. Certainly, that's a page they wanted to turn.
Hmm.
The former minister under Gaddafi, who became head of the transitional government for a while, said he had paper evidence indicating this guy was guilty, and so it was a large goal, an important goal of particularly the Western government, the more democratic government of Libya, to turn the page on terrorism and hand over people that needed to be handed over for responsibility for these international terrorist crimes commanded by Gaddafi. So it's about keeping good graces with foreign powers and showing Libya isn't a home for terrorists.
For more than 40 years, this case has been so murky. But you mentioned the confession. So Masoud was arrested on other crimes. He told officials allegedly that he had been responsible for the Pan Am bombing, and on and on and on. Those were his words, allegedly to law enforcement in Libya. However, a defendant can always say that those kinds of statements were made under duress. Do you think that there is more evidence than his own words? And if that is all there is that enough, do you think, to convict him in U.S. federal court?
Well, I haven't seen the evidence, but all of the evidence was put before a U.S. grand jury on November 29th, and they voted in favor of this extradition and the filing of the charges. So it has to be more than the confession. Certainly, he admitted to building the bomb and the trigger. That was put into a suitcase in Malta with clothes purchased by Magrahi, the person who sold Magrahi his colleague the clothes. We know who that is. There was a lot of non-circumstantial evidence at the Scotland trial for which Megrahi was given a life sentence. His colleague in the Libyan intelligence services, and Libya took responsibility for the crime. They paid $2.7 billion in damages,
Right.
$7 million each to the families in the U.S. after lawyers' fees. And so this is more at the end, a final chapter in this story, not a beginning chapter. We know the Libyans orchestrated it. We know Libyan agents did it at Gaddafi's orders. He says he was congratulated by Gaddafi a month after it.
Right.
So it's just a matter of lining up all the other evidence and presenting it to a jury. And hopefully he delayed things today because he doesn't have a lawyer. Hopefully he'll get a good lawyer and we'll have a fair trial.
All right. William Lawrence, always great to talk to you.